broken heart, a broken promise till it got me under. She ain't never ran from a feeling, guess that's why she ran into me, I know. And now we dancing on the ceiling, I go overboard in moments. I got homies brought it with me, but it ain't the same if you ain't sitting pretty big, yeah. Put it down, plan it out, made it all a moment. I ain't lonely, but I hope to hold you closer, yeah. Right now, I need you late night. I hope this night means something. I know it's the right moment. Tell me what I can do to make this work out. Can't lose my way in the eye of tornadoes, I survive. I know when forces collide, it ain't all horses and rides. It ain't all ponies and peaches and sand on beaches be dry. I feel the slip of my steps and now I come to realize the beats be skipping in chess. So technically I'm a good guy. No, I ain't perfect, but who was perfect? You perfectly fine. I'm late for work all the time. Let's stay up to the sunrise. Been late, been away from it. Street lights glowing, free world. But when it's getting late, I need you right next to me. I need the nights next to you. So look, it's getting late. When the road down, God breathing on me. We ain't slowed down in a while. Never been
WIIFTBP.
Church Chicago's Power Hour. I'm your host, Angie Mims, and
Terrence Key,
TD, aka Terrence Daniels.
I wish I had one witness in the house.
You got one.
Got a couple of them. Got a couple of them.
Two T's.
Give me a testimony.
Oh Lord, he's did it before. Oh Lord.
I got one.
Something
better. I got 5 reasons.
5 reasons. Oh Lord, he turned it around.
Turn it around. He woke me up this morning.
Oh, don't do this. Don't do this.
Go
Number
ahead.
4.
He woke me up this morning.
Come on, number 3. Come.
He woke me up.
Oh Lord.
He woke you up.
That thing could touch you.
I'm
One
telling
of
you.
them 5s will get you. What's the second one?
He woke me up this morning.
Yes sir. Yes sir.
Oh my God.
And the number 1 reason,
Number 1. Final answer.
he woke me up
He
this
woke
morning.
me up this
He
morning.
woke me up this morning.
That's a testimony.
That's a
Turn that thing
testimony.
Sit along with the bad news, night and day. It's 3 a.m. Now scream, run away. Yeah, and the old comforts can't be found. Oh, still I'm stumbling on, and I'm searching round, and I'm trying to see. Oh, you and me. Try to see. If there's a world beyond these walls, shut off all the house lights. I can't breathe. Every single sight is crashing down on me. Flip this cluttered room, yeah, upside down. world beyond these walls.
WIIFTBP.
All right. Hello, everybody. Tio, Mr. Ceasefire Hardiman, coming to you live here today on What's in It for the Black People News Media right now. Yep, I got it. Okay, that's when we're starting the show right now. It's called A Touch of Soul. It's an honor to be here this morning, and I want to thank God for having me here early in the morning every Sunday here on What's in It for the Black People News Network, the media network. Actually, I had a couple of guests that were supposed to join me here today, and that was the Blackthorns, the couple, a good friend of mine, DeAndre, and his wife. So until they chime in with us here via, like the link, then we'll talk about gun violence in Chicago today. I wanted to take on this subject matter of gun violence in Chicago and what more needs to be done to kind of really, really reduce the levels of gun violence in Chicago. I think it's a noteworthy discussion, and we need to come up with new or different strategies, because apparently a lot of the strategies are not working in Chicago right now, that, the strategies that are being implemented, in other words, okay? So it's very, very important. So that's my subject matter for now. And then first and foremost, there's been over 400 shootings, 400 people killed in Chicago so far this year, and 2,200 people shot. So, Chicago is still a bloodbath, especially in the African-American community. So what more can we do to really address this particular epidemic of gun violence that continues to just take so many lives away every year? So if everything goes the way things are going right now in Chicago, looking at the levels of gun violence, you may end up with over close to 800 homicides this year, unfortunately, because we're still in the month of July. We have one more week to go during the month of July, and we're about 415 homicides so far and counting. So, you had people coming from the president's office to Chicago, the attorney general. You had people steady coming to Chicago trying to talk about what more needs to be done. But to me, it's more of the same. It's just more of the same conversation. Some people talk about more police. Some people talk about, making sure that we have more programming in the community, or just strike. Now President Biden's talking about sending in a strike force and all that kind of stuff there. So this is a reality for me. When it comes down to the gun violence in Chicago, my solution or proposition, I am the director of Violence Interrupters Incorporated, but one of my solutions that I would like to really present to the people, in my opinion anyway, this is just my opinion. My views are not the views of the station of What's in It here for the Black People station. These are Tio Mr. Ceasefire Hardiman views. One of my views is that we need to resurrect an African-American army. A lot of people don't want to hear this because it's a little bit too deep. And what I mean by an African-American army, I'm not saying going out there to kill nobody. I'm not saying going out there to hurt nobody. But it's mandatory that we bring these young brothers to the table by any means necessary and in the strongest possible way, because if black men step up to the plate the way we should, I believe some of the young brothers may listen. Some of the young brothers, we can catch some of the young people's attention out there, because most of the gun violence is with young guys between the ages, let's say 15 to let's say 31 to 32 years old. So there's no way people could tell me that we cannot reach out to that particular population and bring them to the table of peace. And the reason I say a black army, because we need brothers from every level of society to organize in Chicago, and we need the family members of the young guys to work with us. So if we cannot reach them, at least one of their family members can possibly reach the young guys. On behalf of my organization, Violence Interrupters Incorporated, we've mediated about 40 conflicts so far this year that could have turned deadly, but we stopped it on the front end, which is so important, very important, my brothers and sisters, stopping the violence on the front end. Too many kids are being shot this year again. Too many women have been shot already. Carjackings are on the rise. So you have a whole lot of issues associated with all kinds of violent acts taking place in the African-American community. And the reason I say African-American, because over 85%, well, about 80 to 85% of the killings that occur in Chicago take place in the African-American community. So something drastic needs to happen. Something drastic needs to take place right now here in Chicago, Baltimore, Philadelphia, parts of New York City, Memphis, St. Louis, Minneapolis, Detroit. The list goes on because I study homicide numbers across our nation. So it's very, very important, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that we organize a unit of black men, and the women can join as well. We don't want to, we would definitely like to invite the women as well to step up to the plate and think about this, a black army of sorts. And I'm not talking about the traditional army, but some type of unit of black men that go out and mediate conflicts all together and bring them guys to the table of peace. Because if we don't step up like our forefathers and our ancestors stepped up, we're going to find ourselves continuing to deal and grapple with the issue of gun violence. And let me say this also. What happens out here, brothers and sisters, I believe everybody's looking in the wrong direction to try to find a solution. See, I'm not against the police, and I say this all the time. As a matter of fact, there was a story in the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper today in regards to my proposition of a black army, okay? And let me just reiterate this. I'm not saying a black army to go out and hurt people and kill people. I don't want nobody to think I'm going to the left right there, but I would say this. Most of my people know what I'm talking about, all right? We need strong brothers that are equipped and trained enough to bring these young brothers to the table by any means necessary to promote and instill some type of discipline in our community. And I'm not so much concerned about the naysayers and the people that's going to say, well, that's thinking kind of like crazy. No, it's not thinking crazy, because if nothing else is working, then you have to turn to different types of solutions. That's the bottom line. 400 dead, 2,200 shot. There's time to implement a new type of approach when it comes down to reducing gun violence. So this is what's happening with the police. Like I said, I'm not against the police, but the police have not been trained to stop killings on the front end. The police get involved once somebody breaks the law. That's when the police get involved. And right now, the homicide clearance rate is about 14% in Chicago, which means people can get away with committing a homicide or taking a life 86% of the time. So people are not worried about being arrested once they shoot and kill somebody. I did a drive through the South Side Chicago 2 weeks ago live on Facebook, and I was live for about 1 hour before I saw a police car. It makes no sense. But the reality is that the police can only do so much. And, I believe it's incumbent upon black men to help heal their community and do all the work necessary to bring forth meaningful change in our community. That's just the way it goes, because the young brothers out there, we need to reclaim our young brothers out there. Last year in 2020, we had close to 760-something homicides. It makes no sense. Over 1,400 carjackings. Now, this is the thing about carjackings, everybody. Carjackings are back on the rise again this year, but you don't hear about it as much because the gun violence is always in the media. Yesterday, there was a march on the west side of Chicago in the Austin community, right? There was a march. Let me give me some water to keep myself hydrated. Hang in there, everybody. There was a march over on the west side of Chicago yesterday in the Austin community. And about 2 or 3 hours right after the march, over in the Austin community, 5 men were shot over in the South Austin area. So what I'm saying is that, what about the marching? If anybody has any comments about marching, do you think the marching really works? Let's try to weigh out different types of solutions. Let me say this as well. When the police shoot and kill somebody, everybody takes to the streets. I'm one of the guys that took to the streets over the last few years as well, standing up against police brutality and excessive force, which is a good thing, to stand up and raise the voices of the people. But why is it that we do not stand up with the same type of intensity or the same type of consistency when somebody shoots a kid in our community, somebody shoots a woman in our community, or somebody kills anybody? We do not stand up with the same type of consistency. And that kind of bothers me a lot of times, because what I'm saying is that if we can stand up against the police, we need to stand up against a lot of this gun violence in our community. So when it happens in our community, in the black community in particular, most people say, well, that's not, that's just the norm. That's what's going on. But we must understand that black death is a hustle. A lot of people are making big money off black death in our community. Police, they work a lot of overtime. You got everybody raising money because of the homicide and shooting numbers, if that makes sense to you all. there's about maybe 7 communities in Chicago that drive most of the gun violence. 7 communities out of the 77 communities. So it makes no sense, but it appears that somewhere along the way, enough is not being done to really bring this issue to a halt, right? We should be at a place in Chicago right now where we have less than 200 homicides a year. That's where we should be, but that's not where we are today, unfortunately. And how do we get there? We get there, first of all, and I'm talking about an ultimate sacrifice for peace. We need a black army resurrected of concerned black men and women, but in particular the black men first, to hit the community about 10,000 strong and separate, like go down every block in Chicago, meet with the young brothers, bring them to the table of peace. It's not going to be easy because there's a lot of trauma out there. There's a lot of hurt people out there. And when people are hurt, they hurt other people. That's what I'm talking about as well. So we have to understand there's a strategy in regards to what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just going out there in a crazy way. What I'm saying, reach out to the young guys and their families first, because I'm here to tell you also, you got to hear me out on this. If we took care of the business like this, I guarantee the young guys out there might just appreciate us coming out, because nobody has come out with the level of intent like what I'm talking about. And the reason I use the word army, because you have people being shot out there with AK-47s. People are being shot by, they call them choppers. There was a time when you have a revolver or something, you probably can do some damage, but now a revolver looks like a toy gun when you put a revolver up against somebody with an AK-47. So our young brothers and sisters need help out there, and I would never promote any violence at all. That's not what this is all about. It's about just trying to reclaim our young people in the community and make sure that we young people live instead of dying out here on the streets of Chicago. Right now, over 52 young people under 15 years old have been shot in Chicago. You had a baby girl shot some time ago, 7-year-old girl killed. It just makes no sense. And, when people see you with your kids, they should never be willing to shoot around nobody's kids. It makes no sense. It's really it's a hurtful situation. And I saw a video of a guy shooting while some kids were riding their bikes over in the Roseland community, Argyle Gardens area, and the guy was just shooting over the kids' heads as if the kids were not even there. So when you reach the level in your mind where you have no respect, no type of honor for the kids in the community, something drastic needs to be done. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's what they pay the police to do. But let me say this to you. Right now, what's going on also is that President Biden's talking about, bringing a strike force to Chicago, a strike force, right? So when you talk about a strike force, I don't know, law enforcement tactics or strategies are not working right now. So why is there a need for a strike force in Chicago? Black death being a hustle, let me explain to you when I say black death is a hustle. See, what happens, everybody uses the numbers of dead people, shooting victims to raise money, to further their personal, agenda, to raise money to stop violence. Police have a $1.7 billion budget or whatever the case may be. So they need to raise more federal funds so that they can get the money they need to go out there and stop the violence, right? A lot of programs raise money off dead people's numbers as well. So that's what I mean when I say black death is a hustle. In my opinion, I believe what should happen in real time is that all the money that's being raised, that money should go to the family members of the victims of gun violence. The people that lost their loved ones, that money should be given to those families, opposed to having all these people chasing clout, receiving the funds to do whatever they're doing, because you're using dead people's numbers, you're using injured people's numbers to raise money for whatever you want to do with it. Hopefully that makes sense to the people that are listening. That's the reason why I say black death is a hustle. And I'm hoping that we can all come together and see, once we resurrect a black army to go out here and address the issues of gun violence in our community, after we bring peace to our community, then we can go out and all the resources that are being pumped into our community, those resources can be used in a different way to make sure we employ all them young brothers and sisters out there that want to work, and we can make sure we have the resources to rebuild places like 79th Street. 79th Street should look like an oasis, but it's not, because the resources are not really trickling down to the people that really, really need the resources. So 79th Street, 63rd Street, Madison and Pulaski, some parts of Roseland. You look at down like on Roseland, like 115th and Michigan Avenue, it looks like a ghost town. The businesses need to be revitalized in those areas. So hopefully I'm making sense to the people that really understand what I'm talking about here. We need to work as hard as we can work to bring peace in our community, but it will not happen until black men step all the way up to the plate. Because right now in Chicago, over the last 10 years, let's just do the math for a second. And I plan to do the math in a real simple way here. Let's say we know for a fact that over 500 people have been killed in Chicago every year over the last 10 years, give or take 1 year out of the last 10 years where it might have been 450 or 480 people opposed to 500. But if you average it out at 500 or 600 homicides a year times 10 years, that's 5,000 or 6,000 homicides every over the last 10 years. And I'm not even talking about the shooting, right? So this is what happens, 85% African-American victims. Now, if you multiply those numbers over the last 20 years, the numbers double, right? 12,000, 10,000. Over 85% African-American people being slaughtered by some of our own people. So it doesn't make no sense. So we're losing way too many young people. So when young people get into conflict, a lot of young people do not know how to resolve the conflict. They don't know who to talk to. That's why it's so important for organizations that have those inroads to the young guys where they can get out there and make sense of the madness and hopefully get them brothers to put their guns down, because it's okay to get into a fight and lose a fight or win the fight and just let it go. You know, chalk it up to the fact that you lost the fight or you won the fight, whatever the case may be. But people are not fighting anymore. People are shooting now. And if a person gets beat up, 9 times out of 10, they're going to run back and go get one of their crazy cousins, or they're going to come back with a gun and try to shoot somebody. So what I'm talking about is real life solutions, dealing with nitty-gritty work out here, and it's not easy. So what can we do as a people? Because to me, this is what you call, it's on a level of even during the Black Power era, during the Civil Rights era, whatever the case may be, we had a different type of fight back then. You know, our ancestors, not our ancestors, but our forefathers, like Jesse Jackson, I'm grateful Jesse Jackson Sr. is still around. I respect and salute. Mr. Farrakhan is still around here today. So those are some of our brothers that we respect out here. But there was a time where they were fighting a different type of fight back in that era. You know, the Black Panther Party, they were fighting against police brutality, excessive force. They were fighting against racism and discrimination during the Dr. King era. But our biggest fight right now is to end the gun violence in Black Chicago. It's like the elephant in the room type of discussion, because the reality of it all is this here. If we do not stop the killing, you have to understand the fabric of life, the quality of life is being diminished in some parts of Chicago. Imagine the homeowners. Imagine the law-abiding citizens that are doing their best to go to work, pay their bills, and take care of their property. Now a lot of the communities are under siege because nobody appears to have a handle on the gun violence. And no matter what the mayor has to say, no matter what the superintendent has to say, there's still nobody out there that has a real handle on reducing gun violence. Superintendent Brown, when he first came to Chicago, he said that he would make sure homicides were reduced in Chicago. As a matter of fact, I heard him make a statement that he would get homicides under 300. And I was saying to myself, this guy's coming from Dallas or the state of Texas. He's way out of his element here in Chicago. Dallas, Texas is a far cry from Chicago when it comes to gun violence. So you have a superintendent in Chicago that he has to learn Chicago. That's another problem. We need somebody in Chicago, in my opinion anyway, this is just my opinion, that really knows the back streets of Chicago and the cracks and crevices in Chicago and understands the culture here, because the gun violence, and the reason why it's hard for a lot of people to reduce gun violence, because the gun violence is more cultural. It's more tribal. You have a lot of interpersonal conflict. If you don't understand the culture, it's hard for you to really deal with this issue of tackling gun violence in Chicago. And I'm breaking that down because I was born and raised in Chicago, born and raised in the heart of the ghetto, and I understand my people oh so well. So therefore, all these big, the marching is cool, but this is the only thing about the marching right here. The marching and rallying in Chicago against gun violence needs to take a different strategy. We need a different strategy, whereas when you just march in the community, we must include a lot of the young brothers that are involved in the killing out there, because them brothers need to be touched. Somebody needs to kind of like send them brothers a wake-up call so they can possibly get on board with the peace movement, because that's clearly not happening right now. So I know for a fact that if Irish guys were killing each other, if the Irish young brothers were killing each other, if the Italian young men were killing each other on the level that black men are killing each other, the Irish men would address their own people. The Italian men would address their own people. They would not just sit back idly and wait for the system to solve the issue of gun violence in their community. So why is it that black men are waiting around for somebody else to solve this issue? And I know some people look at us like we crazy, because they're saying, look here, everybody's pointing fingers. You got the mayor pointing fingers at the state's attorney, Kim Foxx. You got the superintendent pointing fingers at the criminal justice system, Judge Evans, and nobody wants to take the blame. But if the homicides were down, everybody would be taking the credit for it, right? So we have to learn how to really navigate this situation, because we need all hands on deck, and all of us have to take the responsibility for the failures right now in Chicago. See, no man is an island. No woman is an island. We all have to share the responsibility of accepting the reality that no matter what's going on with all the good work that everybody's doing, we're steady losing too many youth in Chicago. So I would be the first to tell you this here, because I do a lot of good work in Chicago, but I'm not the only solution. I'm part of the solution. So I'm here to say I would take my own responsibility for what's being done or what's not being done in Chicago, because my whole thrust right now is we need an African-American army of brothers. I'm talking about solid gold brothers, to the point where, you need really, and I don't want nobody to take my language the wrong way, you need some guerrilla brothers, right? You need some intellectual brothers. You need business brothers. You need street brothers. Everybody, like I say, all hands on deck to go out there and say, look here, man, I know you have an issue. I know a lot of people have been killed from both sides, but what can we do to straighten this situation out? No matter how long it takes, no matter how we have to deal with the issue, because you cannot continue to keep killing and expect things to get better. That's just the reality of it, because what you're going to do, kill everybody in the neighborhood? So right now, a lot of the shootings, as far as the shootings when you have crowds of people out there, it's become fashionable now for people to shoot in crowds. So I'm here to tell everybody in Chicago and Cook County, at large, do your best to try to stay away from the big crowds out there. I'm not trying to pretty much put any fear in people's hearts or anything like that, but you have to be careful when you're around big crowds, because guys are shooting into the crowds, especially if you're coming out of a funeral, you at like a memorial, or you just hanging out with your guys out there. Try not to just sit in your car on different blocks out there, because people shoot first, and they don't ask questions later. There was a time they shoot first, ask questions later, but now they shoot first and they don't ask any questions. So be very, very careful. Carjacking is fashionable right now for some young guys, and this is the real problem with carjacking. Some of the guys that are involved in carjacking, they're just carjacking for the fun of it. It's not like they're making money off selling the cars. They're just carjacking. Some of them may carjack a person and use that car to go shoot somebody. But you got groups of guys riding around the city with masks on, jumping out their cars, carjacking people. And that's the reason why I say you need sort of like a black army to deal with our own people. I don't care if people get mad at me. I can care less about that, because to me, it's a man's world, but it doesn't mean nothing without a woman. Don't get me wrong, but it's a man's world out here. It's not about being tough. I'm not trying to talk like I'm so tough and all that stuff. That has nothing to do with it. I'm a grown man, and I know what's needed, and we as a people must organize just like this. Now, the Nation of Islam, some years ago, they had a program set up in Kansas City, in one of the projects in Kansas City, and they actually cleaned up the whole project area over there. The Nation of Islam, some of Minister Farrakhan's guys, they cleaned up the entire project area. So I know what I'm talking about. There's some proof evidence of how disciplined black men, when we organize, we can get some things done. And the young brothers out there, those young brothers are our brothers, okay? Those young brothers belong to our community, but we've lost them young brothers. Now, just to take a little something out of the world here, you had a civil war in the country of Liberia, over in Africa, Liberia, right? a civil war took place, and there were a lot of child soldiers that were trained to fight in the Civil War. And when the war was over, the young people that were trained to fight as younger, like 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, the men had to reclaim them young guys so they could become citizens again and become just normal young guys, because a lot of killing had taken place in the Liberia Civil War back then. So the same type of strategy needs to take place here in Chicago. We have to reclaim our young people out there. It's just too much trauma. Now, what I want to do also, I want to delve a little bit into this conversation about the rap industry just a little bit. I'm not here to name names of the rappers or none of that kind of stuff, because it's not important to me. It shouldn't be important to a lot of people. The beefing on social media and some of the clout chasing on social media is causing gun violence to occur in some of the neighborhoods here in Chicago as well. You have a lot of crews out here that want to just film videos and talk about all the people they smoked, all the people they shot and killed. What I'm saying to young guys out here, the bottom line, we must stop the killing, period. But nobody should be on no music video, nowhere, no how, on any given day, talking about who they shot or who they killed. It makes no sense, right? That's not what men should be doing, because what's going on, people are chasing clout, trying to get a lot of views, and it appears that some of these young guys actually secure record deals because of all the views they have on their videos. So you got guys out here that want to imitate what other guys are doing. My thing is, once you make it in the rap industry, if you made all the millions of dollars, it's time to change the game. Change the game. You don't have to keep rapping about who you killed, who you shot, and all that kind of crazy stuff, because a lot of the rappers, once they've made it, they're not out there shooting and killing people anyway. They're just in the studio doing their thing. So the record companies must take heed to what we're talking about as well, because it's not right to continue to push that type of toxicity or toxic type of thinking on the airways. It's just not right. And with social media, or YouTube, with Facebook, Instagram or whatever, people can just produce whatever they want to produce and put it out there for young people to see. So we have to find a way to kind of change the strategy out here when it comes down to reducing gun violence, and it comes back to a disciplined black community. Going back to our forefathers, once again, there was a lot of discipline. In a real African nation, let me say this to you, in a serious African nation, we would not tolerate this kind of stuff anyway. That's what's really crazy about the overall setup, because in a real serious African nation, this type of behavior would not be tolerated. People would have to be, held accountable to some degree, right? So there's been conversation also about the state's attorney's office, the criminal justice system, being what they call soft on crime. So there's been a lot of story. There are a lot of stories out there where guys were out on home monitoring, electronic devices. What I'm hearing from a lot of brothers and sisters in the community is that a lot of professionals in law enforcement as well, 2,000 people that were placed on electronic monitoring are missing right now. People do not know where they are. There were some lies told over to Cook County Jail, like they reduced the prison population. The reason the prison population was reduced at Cook County Jail is because they were putting people out on electronic monitoring, which my thing is this here. I'm like 50-50 with it. 50-50, I understand the system is not just, it's an unjust system we're dealing with, and I know a lot of people should not be locked up. But what do you do with guys that committed violent acts against other people? Then you put them on electronic monitoring, or they got caught with guns and now they're on electronic monitoring. So you have to kind of balance the scale when you're dealing with issues of crime, and especially gun crimes. You have to balance the scale. There's no time to be totally soft on crime, because it's just hard, because I'm speaking for the victims now. So, you have to have a conversation with the mothers and the family members that have lost their loved ones due to gun violence before you pass judgment, because everybody wants to be like so understanding, which I get that. I understand that. But this is one way of being understanding as well. If you're a young guy out there and you're thinking about shooting and killing somebody just because, there's no rhyme or reason. Some people just feel because they have the heart to shoot and kill somebody, it's okay. You have to understand the consequences. Most people are not worried about consequences because, like I say, the homicide clearance rate is only like 14% in Chicago. But if you do get caught and you're sentenced to 80 years in prison, you're sentenced to like life or whatever, you're doing like all your time now. You know, it used to be a time where you do like 50% of your time. Now people are doing, they have to serve 80% of their sentence or maybe 100% of their sentence, which means if you're 21 years old or 20 years old and you receive an 80-year sentence, that means you may get out when you're 75 years old or 100 years old if you live to be 100 years old. Now you got to think about this. You got to think about being around guys all day, every day for the next 70 years at least, minimum. Let's say the next 50 years, because some people, they die down in prison, they go crazy. And then let's say while you 21 or 22 years old, let's say 10 years pass by, now you 32. You're not going to look at the world the same way. Another 10 years goes by, you 42. Things began to really change. You change your mind in a lot of situations. Then you find out you coming into your manhood for real, and you realize everything you was fighting for it wasn't worth it in the end. It just wasn't worth it. The bottom line for young men, that's what I tell young men all the time. It's important for young men to raise a family, do the best you can to take care of your family legacy. That's what young men should be building families out here, not destroying families and taking lives. So hopefully this information is helpful for everybody, because you're not going to stop the gun violence in any kind of way until black men, I'm talking about a black man takeover in Chicago, every block, all over the place, along with the family members of the shooters as well, so the family members can talk to their sons, cousins, or whatever the case may be. And the black men, the Army I'm talking about, we reinforce the message. And if we can just get the guys to slow down 80% of the way, that could lead to an 80% reduction in shootings and homicides with the approach that I'm talking about right now, a black army of sorts, okay? And for the record, I said for the last time only, I'm not talking about going out there killing nobody. I want to make that clear. But I'll say this much to you. You have a bunch of cowards out there shooting a lot of people that cannot defend themselves. That's happening each and every day out here. People being chopped down, AK-47s all over the place. Guys walking down the streets, they're being shot down and killed. Now, there probably is a small percentage of the shootings, and it may not be black people shooting our people, a small percentage of the shootings, but the majority of the shootings are African-American guys killing their own people, and that's what we have going on in Chicago. And it's what's really so sad about it also, a lot of the kids that are trying to do right, a lot of young ladies and young men that are trying to do right, they get caught up in the crossfire. That's what happens to the kids out there. And anybody in the black community that would condone or either not want to step up or voice their opinion about the shooting of a kid or executing a woman or killing some older person, I think you're dead wrong for that, because some people are so cut from the street cloth, they'll say, well, things happen in society, or that's just, we have to chalk it up to the game. Now, you don't have to chalk that up to the game. The reality, if you're not willing to speak out against somebody killing a kid, no matter who you are, something is wrong with your thinking, brothers and sisters, because if it was your child, you would look at it a totally different way. There's a young lady now, she's partially blind in her eyes, and her 15-year-old son was killed last week, and her son was the only person that would walk her to the store, try to take care of his mother. He lost his life. So go tell that family member about what's going on. Go talk to that family before you pass judgment on anybody else, because it's really, really sad to see the levels of gun violence that continue to take place in Chicago, especially after all these millions and millions and billions of dollars have been spent to reduce gun violence. You still have high levels of gun violence. So let me say this also, everybody. I'm willing to guarantee you, if we don't change the culture of what's going on in Chicago and cities across America, if we do not change the culture, we will not reduce the gun violence. And when I'm talking about changing the culture, we have to change the culture to a disciplined black community where young guys from the age of 5 years old all the way to when they become an older man, all the way to 80 years old, everybody would be on the same page, and they have to read like an oath before they leave out of their house. And that oath reads, I will not bring any harm to another black man in my lifetime. I salute and respect my community, my elders. I salute and respect the women in my community. That should be an oath that every black young person should have to read before they walk out the house. And it has to be reinforced when they go to school. It has to be reinforced everywhere they go. And once you change the culture to begin thinking on a higher level that you respect in all of your people, that's what it's all about, brothers and sisters. That's why we need to go back to a disciplined black community, which is so important if you want to bring about solutions. So going back to the numbers just for a minute here, because, I get on the road when I talk about this issue because this is an issue that's dear to my heart. And I want to say this to you also, everybody. Before any cameras were showing, before the news was coming out covering my work, I was out there doing the work. You're talking about 20 years of working in the community so far, taking care of the business, saving lives. Like I said, my Violence Interrupters have mediated 40 conflicts this year so far on the front end that could have turned deadly, but we saved 40 lives. It's not a big number, but it's a solid number. A lot of people are using Violence Interrupters, but I am the creator of the Violence Interrupters, and people do not want to pay respect all the time, but I don't get caught up in it because God is in the blessing business. I turn everything over to my God. I don't get stuck there because if you get stuck, then you start looking back, you cannot move forward all the way. So I salute everybody out here that are doing the best they can do. I don't want to come off too critical all the time because when you begin to analyze and break down what's happening and what's not happening, people think that you're criticizing somebody, but the numbers tell the truth. The numbers tell the truth. Over 400 people have been killed in Chicago so far this year, over 2,200 people shot. And carjackings are on the rise, like I said, once again. And some people, you have home invasions going on, in some communities in Chicago, which is crazy. Hopefully that will not become a trend or a fashion because then things are going to get really sick. It kind of reminds me of the movie The Purge. What I see happening right now is I look at some of the videos of the young brothers out there. It looks like the movie The Purge. People riding around with their semi-automatic weapons, just shooting people, just to shoot people. In some cases, too many innocent people are being shot and killed out here. And even if you were to engage in an argument with somebody, it's important not to just try to pass judgment, try to work it out before it reaches a level where you have to shoot that person. We should always try to work out our situations before it reaches a level to where you have to shoot somebody. People fight all the time. Just, let it go and step it off to the best of your ability, especially if you played a role in it, all right? And do not allow nobody to send you off. So a lot of people talk about, like I say, this issue, and I'm just getting a little bit tired of seeing the same stories play out month after month, year after year. How many times are we going to keep talking about more police? Now, I've been reading some articles. They say a lot of police are standing down now. The police are not as concerned about stopping the killing like they used to be, but I'm here to say that the police never stopped the killing. I cannot remember a time or a year where the police ever stopped the killing. Now, the reality is this as well. The illegal gun trade it needs to be dealt with on a higher level. Now that's something that, the system can deal with that. That's the only thing I'm going to say about that because we have way too many illegal guns in Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis. People can go out there and buy guns. They can go down south. They can go, really, they don't have to go that far. They can go to Kentucky, Louisville. They can go to some places in Mississippi, purchase the guns, Arkansas, and bring them back to Chicago. They can go to Florida. Wisconsin is an open carry state. But let's weigh out the gun laws for a minute, and let's take a look at guns in general, right? So we all, understand the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, and all that kind of good stuff there, right? So is it really the legal gun owners that are part of the problem, or is it more so the illegal gun trade? So I'm here to tell you there are no numbers that can back up the fact that legal gun owners are part of the gun violence problem. So it's really about the illegal gun trade. So it makes me think or believe that some people really, really want this killing to continue because there's not enough work being done in the area to kind of intercept the illegal gun trade here in Chicago. And that's being serious with you. We've heard stories about guns being left on the railroad tracks and the freight train. We've heard stories about guns being sold all on the streets of Chicago. And see, where's everybody, getting these semi-automatic weapons from? You got guns out here with laser beams on them. They can put the laser on your head and the gun, you're going to be killed just like that. And people shooting, man, all over the place. So there's a lot of fronts we have to fight on, right? And then we're not even talking about the illegal drug trade. So we must deal with these issues the same way our forefathers had to fight against the system back then. But like I said, a lot of people may not want to hear this because it's too complex, too complicated, or whatever the case may be. But we have a lot of work to do, brothers and sisters, if we want to get it right. And I'm just one person that talks the way I talk because I have younger, kids that are growing up in Chicago, people, family members. I have extended family members, and I'm not no different than anybody else. We're concerned about our own people as well, but we're also concerned about the community at large. I've been receiving a lot of phone calls from young women lately, calling me to help them in different situations. As a matter of fact, over the last 2 or 3 months, God allowed me to work with some women and get them out of some domestic violence situations. So we got a chance to put it like this, we got a chance to remove 4 women out of some domestic violence situations and kind of relocate them to a better place. And it's really, really something when you see the work that you're doing, it kind of pays off, because I talked to one of the young women yesterday. We kind of relocated this young lady, and she was so happy. She's working a job now. Her 2 kids are not in any harm's way anymore because we had to go over to her house and get her out of a bad situation. And what's really crazy about this particular story, the guy was in the house when we arrived, and he was looking kind of crazy and everything, but we had about 4 or 5, guys with us, and this is the work that some of our people do. And basically, we moved the lady out the house. She had some clothes, some bags of clothes, her kids' clothes, a little TV. She had some papers and stuff like that. And the guy, he didn't say nothing to us, but you can see he had hurt that woman a few times, the way she was looking. So we got her out of the situation. And the 4 sisters that we relocated, 4 young women, I just want to thank you all for having the courage to reach out so we could relocate you to somewhere else. Then I've also been receiving a whole lot of calls from women. Got a call from a lady from the west side of Chicago the other day. Well, really, late last week, her next door neighbor had been, abusing her verbally, and then he also had threatened to hurt her physically. And I had to send some guys over there to kind of intercept that situation, but we have it under control now. So these are just some phone calls from the neighborhood that have, when the people call, I can't turn them down. So I have a few people that work with me, and we send people on these kind of missions to kind of help stop some of this crazy stuff out here. And one story that really sticks out in my head right now, there was a situation about 2 months ago over in the Inglewood community where a guy, he purchased some property, but the former property owners were mad because they lost the house, and the guy was rehabbing the house, and they shot at him, They missed, so the guy was a concealed carry guy. He returned fire. He missed. So it was beginning to spiral, so to speak, into a crazy situation. So I received a phone call, and I got with some of my guys in that particular area, and we got a chance to bring both parties together and resolve the issue. And what it came down to is the guy that lost the house, the property, that was a house he was raised in. His grandparents raised him, but they lost the house due to foreclosure. And the young guy just did not want to give up the house, and he became very emotional about it. And that's the reason why he said he shot at the guys. So once again, we're dealing with emotions. We're dealing with misplaced feelings, displaced anger, and all that kind of stuff. So these are just some of the stories that come right from the concrete jungles of Chicago, how God has used me and my team to step up to the plate in a lot of situations and bring forth a peaceful resolution, all right? So before I get out here today, I still have about a good 9 or 10 minutes. I just want to say to everybody, a touch of soul with Tio Hardiman. This is the real deal. I'm not trying to brag or boast on anything that I do out here in the community, because blessed are the peacemakers, and God is in the blessing business. But if we really, really want to stop the gun violence, it's going to take an overall effort of black men like never before. And just imagine if you look out your window one day and you see 10,000 black men doing what they need to do in their community, right? So that would be so special. In my mind, it would be so special based on the fact that it's never happened before. And I'm not talking about just a march. I'm talking about a total black man takeover of the community, for example, Inglewood, Austin, West Garfield, East Garfield, Roseland, just to name a few communities, Chatham, South Shore, Avalon Park area, just like I say, just to name a few communities. Just imagine how that would look, and how the people would feel. And then we bring safety and peace back to our community by any means necessary. Just imagine how that would make the community at large feel, because you got older women out here that stay by themselves and they're scared to leave their houses. You have a guy was just killed up in Hyde Park in the parking lot right there, you know, on 53rd and I think right off of Woodline, one of those streets there. The guy was beat up. The young guys were in the process of taking his car. They hit the guy in the head. He was 73 years old and he passed away. He's a grandfather. You know, he was a brother he was an Afrocentric brother. I saw the pictures of the brother, and I found out I do know his brother, Will Cooper. His brother was killed many, many years ago. A good friend of mine, his name was Willie Cooper, but that was his brother, his older brother, who was killed as well. So I pray for his family, and it makes no sense that we continue to take the lives of our people out here for nothing. Now, the two guys that killed this guy, now they're locked up in prison, so they may be facing 60, 70 years in prison. And, you know, I call that the twilight zone, because once you go to the twilight zone, and let me paint this picture for everybody. Once you are locked up and you've been convicted of a violent crime, let's go through the process for everybody, okay? First thing, you go to the Cook County Jail. And chances are you may not get a bond, or chances you may get a bond. But let's say you do not, secure a bond, right? So now you're sitting in Cook County Jail waiting to go to court, okay? It's a slow process. It's a slow grind. Doing time is a slow grind, no matter how you put it. So you're locked up away from your family, away from your kids if you have kids, or whatever the case may be. So now you wait on a court date. So you up on one of them decks talking to all the brothers. They talking all the talk they want to talk, how you can beat the case, how you can do this, or what they're in there for. But the moral of the story, you're fighting a murder. Now you're 21 years old, you're fighting a murder because you want to be a part of the end game. You want to be a part of the system. You think you're the man, right? So you're fighting a murder. So now 2-3 months pass by, you in Cook County Jail, eating the jail food. You got on jail clothes out there and all that kind of crazy stuff. So let's say you go to trial. See, about 85% of the cases, or 90% people, they work out a plea bargain, then you just go and accept your time. So let's say you hard-headed, you want to go to trial. So now you go to trial, you get found guilty of murder, first degree, second degree murder, which dictates anywhere from 50 or more years in prison. So once you leave Cook County, you've been convicted, the bus comes to get you and they ship you off to Stateville prison first, and they hold you there in Stateville for a couple of weeks behind a steel door, behind the bars, whatever the case may be. You're locked in the cell for 23 hours a day. 23 hours a day, right? For 2 weeks, no TV, no radio. You're just eating the same prison food, okay? So once you finish doing that, now they send you off to the prison, whatever penitentiary you have to go to. So chances are you're going to maximum security penitentiary, Pontiac, Menard. And you down there, Menard is way down in Marion, Illinois, Menard, Illinois, whatever the case may be, way, way down in one of them southern areas here in the state of Illinois. Pontiac is a little closer, but now you're on 23-hour lockdown. And do not think them brothers are doing good in them jails. 23-hour lockdown make you go crazy. So what I'm doing is just painting a picture for everybody. Is it really worth it in the end to be sitting in a jail cell just thinking about what you did or how you could have made a better decision? And trust and believe me, 90% of young guys that are locked up wish they could turn back the hands of time, but they cannot turn back the hands of time because life is not that way. Once you commit the act, it's done. You have to deal with the consequences. You may get away with some stuff for a while, but eventually life is going to catch up with you eventually. So hopefully my message today is strong enough where people can understand that it's time out for the nonsense. I hope some of the young brothers, even if you watch my broadcast here, that you would make a decision to say, look here, I plan to listen to this brother. He's making a lot of sense to me, and I need to be raising my family instead of going out here going crazy in the neighborhood. Some people have tattoos of their partners on their arms. They should have tattoos of their kids, their mothers or their women or their wives on their arms, not any tattoos of their best friends and all that kind of stuff. You should have tattoos of your family members on your arm if you're going to get a tattoo. So that's what I have for you all today, Father, a touch of soul and everything that we're talking about. Normally, I would come on here, sing a little bit, have a few guests to talk, but today I wanted to dedicate this particular show to dealing with this issue of gun violence that continues to, wipe out so many lives here that it doesn't make no sense. There was some information where over like 300,000 African-American people have been killed here in Chicago throughout the nation, not Chicago, throughout the nation over the last 35 years. There were some numbers put together which showed like 332,000 African-American people have been killed across the nation by our own people. So it gets kind of crazy, brothers and sisters. So I'm hoping that you all take heed to my message. And if you got young people in your family that are shooters out there, try to talk them down, get them to just change the way they think, man. Do whatever you can do in your power to make things happen on a higher level, man. I'm dead serious. So there was no game today, no singing or none of that stuff. This is what you call a serious subject matter, and I hope you all learned a lot from me today. But the only way to stop the gun violence in Chicago is very, very important to address it as black men first. And then once we address it and reduce the harm in our community, then we can talk about restorative justice and repair the harm on a higher level, because people need to heal. Hurt people hurt other people. We need a healing in the land right now. We need a healing. So I want to thank God for allowing me to host this particular show. And I want to send a shout out to my sponsors before I sign off quickly here. I want to thank Dr. Willie Wilson, Youth Connection Charter Schools, the Associated Builders and Contractors of Illinois and the Community Builders Program, and the Chicago Cred Rules of Engagement Program to try to reduce gun violence, which I think is very important. And State Farm Insurance, my main man, Larry Williams. If you need automobile, home, and life insurance, reach out to Larry Williams, State Farm Insurance, 773-379-9009. Reach out to a lot of my sponsors if you need support. Youth Connection Charter Schools. If you have a young person in your family that dropped out of school, reach out to yccs.us. You can re-enroll that person back in school. We're about to sign off. Peace and blessings to the entire world. Thank you. Peace.
WIIFTBP.